Our period of Avelus that's starting now, the period of Bein HaMetzarim, is very different than what the non-Jewish world portrays about Am Yisrael in their mourning over the Churban. Right? There are many phrases in English that have subtle subtexts. For example, the common way that they used to call the kotel, if you ever got those old postcards from relatives, it would say on there, the Wailing Wall. Now, the word wailing in English has a particular connotation. It's a type of crying which is done over something which is gone and not coming back. It's a cry of total despair. Okay, that's used to be an advertisement for Chivas Regal whiskey. It was a picture of a broken bottle and a puddle of whiskey on the floor, and it said, "Have you ever seen a grown man cry?" Right now, it's not coming back. That's wailing. Okay, that's the idea of wailing. The picture of the wandering Jew. There's even a house plant or a garden plant which is called the wandering Jew because it simply wanders. It goes all over the place and it's going everywhere and going nowhere. Am Yisrael's picture is entirely different, right? We're going towards Geula. The famous statement of the Magid of Koznitz, Kol Rodfeha Yisigua Bein HaMetzarim. He parsed the word Rodfeha as Kol Rodfei Koh. All those who run after HaKadosh Baruch Hu, run after the Shechina, Hisigua, can catch up, so to speak, can connect with the Shechina Davka Bein HaMetzarim. Meaning that this time is an opportunity, that the Inyone Avelus that we have are things which are moving us forward, not miring us in suffering of the past, but being able to progress and to move along with Am Yisrael, because Rav Chaim Friedlander always says that any onesh Am Yisrael receives is never nekama. It's not Hashem taking revenge on Am Yisrael. You did this, so you've got to go wander around. It's tikkun. It's a process of repair. So I'd like to share some thoughts, and it's really just bits and pieces of symphonic pieces from Rav Moshe Wolfson Zatzal, who just passed away recently, and his writings about Shivasa B'Tamuz. And as was his way, he reveals things that I'd never seen before or thought of in terms of Shivasa B'Tamuz. Right, first of all, he says that you have to realize that Shivasa B'Tamuz is meant to be a yontiv. Right, this we see in the Navi, that all of these somos are going to be the Beis Yisrael, the Sason or the Simcha. And he said, in fact, he spoke on a Shavuos, at the Ne'ilas HaChag on Shavuos, at the end of Shavuos, when he would gather together with his Talmidim. He said that one of the Stolner Rebbe's, his minhag was, at the end of Sukkot, after Simchas Torah, he would take out his Hanukkah menorah, his Chanukia, and put it on the table and polish it up. Why? Because that's the next Yontiv on the horizon. He said at the end of Shavuos, you're supposed to prepare for Shivasa B'Tamuz. That's this next Yontiv on our horizon. Okay? Nobody's feeling particularly Yontiv today, but it's very important that we know what Shivasa B'Tamuz really is meant to be, and what it eventually will be. Because if it's something we're supposed to be rodef, we're supposed to run after it, we're supposed to put effort in trying to reach it, it can be compared to someone who's digging in the hope of finding treasure. Okay, there can be a person who's going around digging, looking, maybe there's treasure. There can be a person who's told that there is treasure, right? He has no idea what it is, but it's still worth going for. And then there's a person who knows what the treasure is that's buried. He knows that it's his. Such a person will dig and not give up, will dig deeply and dig with energy. And even if it's painful, and even if it's exhausting, and even if he's sweating and suffering while he's doing it with a joy because he knows he's uncovering that treasure. Let's take a look at the treasure of Shivasa B'Tamuz. Start with an interesting question. It brings, why was Balak afraid of Am Yisrael? Chazal tell us that Balak was a greater kosim than Bilam. Balak was a greater necromancer, if you want to use the fancy word, than Bilam. He certainly knew in his intelligence, whether this worldly or otherworldly, that Am Yisrael were told, Al Tatzaras Moav, don't start up with Moav. We're not going to be destroying and conquering Moav. So why is he having such a fit about Am Yisrael coming and his fear and his hiring of Bilam to curse them? What was he afraid of? He was afraid of Shivasa B'Tamuz. How was Balak afraid of Shivasa B'Tamuz? Number one, Shivasa B'Tamuz already happened. And the Jews didn't do very well on that Shivasa B'Tammuz that happened. The Luchos were destroyed. That's one of those 5 things that we speak about in the Slichos. It was meant to be that day of Matan Torah. It was meant to be the culmination of Matan Torah, in which Moshe Rabbeinu was to bring down the Luchos and give them to Am Yisrael, and instead the Luchos were shattered. That wasn't the Shivasa B'Tammuz that Balak was afraid of. He was afraid of a Shivasa B'Tammuz in the future. Which Shivasa B'Tammuz? The Chasam Sofer in the Drashas, and I looked this up in there, has a whole cheshbon that proves, he says that on the 17th of Tammuz, that was the day that Rus was allowed to join Am Yisrael. That was the day in which the psak came out, right, that she could join Am Yisrael. That is the day in which she married Boaz. That is the day in which she became pregnant with Oved, who eventually led to Yishai and David HaMelech and the line of Mashiach. All of that happened on Shivasa B'Tammuz. Why was he afraid of that? Because Balak was spiritually aware enough to know that the power that he and the Malchus of Moab had was because of this spark of Kedusha that they carried within themselves. Right? This is the idea, this special gift, it says, that was meant to come out of Moab, which was going to be Rus HaMoaviyah, David HaMelech, and his line. And Tumah can always draw power from Kedusha. And he understood that as long as this Kedusha was hidden latent within inside Moab, he could have power and success, and his nation could have power and success. But if that event would happen on Shivasa B'Tammuz, and Rus would join Am Yisrael and take all of that Kedusha from where it was held captive in Moab and bring it to its rightful place in Am Yisrael, that would be the end of Moab. So Shivasa B'Tammuz is a day of tremendous Kedusha. In time, it's equivalent to what Rus was in terms of people. Someone of tremendous Kedusha that was being kept in captivity. It was hidden. She was brought up in the house of the king of Moab. She was a princess of Moab. She was there among Ovdei Avodah Zarah. She was in a nation which was detestable in many ways, including its own name and the roots of it. And yet she was able to come free. Right? She met Nomi V'rus Dovkaba. And Nomi was able to accomplish this drawing of the Kedusha that was Rus to connect to her and through her to connect to Am Yisrael. And this was the true downfall of Moab that would be there. Shivasa B'Tammuz, right, is a day that was meant to be a tremendous yontif. Who said so? Aaron HaKohen. When Am Yisrael made the Egel, and Aaron was trying to delay them and get them to wait, and he said, Chag L'Hashem Mochar. Tomorrow is going to be a Chag L'Hashem. Moshe Rabbeinu is going to come down. We're going to get the Luchos. That's going to be the culmination of all and of everything. It didn't happen then. It was spoiled by the Egel and the breaking of the Luchos, but that Nevuah doesn't subside. The Nevuah lasts and remains. And that Chag L'Hashem Mochar, number one, did have its appearance on that Shivasa B'Tammuz when Rus became part of Am Yisrael, leading to the birth of Mashiach. And the Chag L'Hashem Mochar that will come when Shivasa B'Tammuz doesn't become transformed from a sad day of Avelus into a happy day, but when it takes its natural and rightful place once again as a Chag L'Hashem. That is all there, and that is what is meant to be. And its source is something which is very high. If we think about how great Yom Kippur is, Yom Kippur is, in many ways, the highest day of the year, that day of Shabbos Shabboson. And the reason that it has that character, sometimes we tend to forget it on Yom Kippur, is because on that day Moshe Rabbeinu came down and we received the Luchos Shniyos. So he says, if we imagine, Chazal speak about how different the Luchos Shniyos were from the Luchos Rishonos. If we have such a Yom Tov as a Yom Kippur, on the day when we got the Luchos Shniyos, that couldn't compare in their stature to Luchos Rishonos, imagine what Yom Tov Shivasa B'Tammuz was meant to be as the day that we would receive the first Luchos. Those things don't disappear. They don't go away just like we didn't. They go into Golus. They're hiding. But their potential is always there and has to be brought out. So this was Balak's fear. He knew that even after Am Yisrael spoiled that first Shivasa B'Tamuz, the power of Shivasa B'Tamuz was still there. He feared what would happen when Rus would come out on that Shivasa B'Tamuz, and fear for the eventual results of the Rus of David and Melech HaMashiach. Balak, when he said, Ato yilachachu akol es kol svivosenu, he said, the Kol, this nation, this community of Am Yisrael, they're going to lick up everything around us, right? Kilcho chashor, like an ox licks up all the grass in the pasture. It's a very strange kind of description and fear. And why does he call Am Yisrael HaKol? Right? We call them a nation, the invaders, whatever you would want to call them. Why the Kohol? So he says the fear were the halachas of Kohol of Am Yisrael. Meaning, if this gets out and Rus is allowed lovo ba-Kohol, so then all the power of Moav, Kol Svivosenu, all of that which surrounds the Kedusha of Rus is going to be devoured. Because that's the only source of our power, is that we're this holding place for that Kedusha of Rus. And therefore that would all be destroyed. Rav Moshe, again, he brings endless gematrias. A nephew of his told me that he would see the gematrias. It wasn't like he was sitting before Sheva Brachas trying to think, okay, Shendel is this, and Yankel is this, and how do I make up a good gematria? He would just see these things coming out of the words. He said, Balak ben Tzipor melech Moav bo'es hahi, at that time, bo'es, he says, gematria Yud Zayin B'Tamuz. Right? That was the source of his malchus. That was the source of his power, and that was the source of his fear. Okay, so he called on Bilam to deal with this problem of the Shivasa B'Tamuz. What did Bilam do? Vayoshes el hamidbar ponov. Bilam turned to the desert. Rashi says, El ha'egel sha'asu Yisrael b'midbar, v'lachein nishtabru haluchos. Meaning, point out the fact that Shivasa B'Tamuz has now been canceled. It was supposed to be a Yom Tov, it isn't. And he was hoping that the power of the Klola that Bilam could have could prevent Shivasa B'Tamuz from ever regaining its rightful place again. But what he didn't know was a secret. That no matter what Am Yisrael does, HaKadosh Baruch Hu loves even HaGorua B'Yisrael, the worst of all Jews, Ba'ava Aza, with a tremendous love. And he's choshev machshava shel yidach mimenu nidach. And all the events which are happening in the world, part of the calculations are that no Jewish soul should ever be lost. That every Jewish soul will come back in one way or another. Even in ways which we can't see, even in ways which seem impossible to us. He points to the Rechaim HaKadosh in this week's parsha, Parshas Pinchas, trying to explain the pasuk. V'shem Ish Yisrael, Hamukah, Asher Ukos HaMidyonis, Zimri ben Solu. Says the name of the Ish Yisrael, of that prince of Shimon, who did what he did with the Kozbi Bas Tzur, it calls him V'shem Ish Yisrael. Why does it have to identify that he comes from Yisrael? We know that he came from Yisrael, right? If he's the Nasi base of La Shimoni, if he's the Nasi of Shimon, he was probably Jewish. What's it doing there? Says the Rechaim HaKadosh, he brings a few explanations, but he brings the following. Says, Shekodam lanu midivrei HaMekubalim. He says this is based on the words of the Mekubalim, Shelo yidach nidach mikol nitzotzei HaKadusha. That not one spark of Kedusha, meaning not one Jewish soul, will ever be lost. Bekulan the basof yizku lamakom shmimenu bo. And all of them eventually will come back to the place that they came from. This means, and this someone showed me, it's not a sefer I learned regularly, but this was a part that could be read even by a layman, the Leshem, right, the famous Mekubal, grandfather of Rav Yoshiv, has a piece in there which he explains that every single Jewish soul, even ones that it's written about them, Ein lo chelek l'olam haba, even ones that are written about them with kares, any of them, all of them, will eventually come back. That is a fact of what's in the universe. And he says, Kulam basof yizku lamakom shmimenu bo, they will all get there. Hagam shiaria ish Yisrael, even if a person does terrible things, af yatzriach nafsho, even if his soul is crying in agony over what he's done wrong, Sof kol sof yachzor l'shosho. He will come back. And that's why it says Shem Yisrael, meaning even after what Zimri did, he retains the name Yisrael. Not just Yaakov, Yisrael, the highest form that we have. And this is the love that HaKadosh Baruch Hu has, and that was what was incomprehensible to Balak, to Bilam, and something that we ourselves often forget. And that is the source of the power of Shivasar B'Tamuz to return. The Chet Egel didn't destroy Shivasar B'Tamuz, it sent it into Golus. But something which is in Golus is meant to come out into Geula. There's another place in which the Torah talks about Shivasar B'Tamuz. The very last words in the Torah. Right? It says that the last words in the Torah, La'enei Kol Yisrael, the eyes before Am Yisrael, talking about all the things Moshe Rabbeinu did. And Rashi says, what is that final one referring to? La'enei Kol Yisrael Shenasa'o Libo. The Moshe Rabbeinu's heart inspired him, Lishbor Aluchos Le'eneim, to break the luchos before the eyes of Am Yisrael. That's the end of the Torah. That's what happened on Shivasar B'Tamuz. Now, what's strange, Wilson asks, is we know we have a klal. You're not supposed to end something with divrei paronos, right? With things that are not happy, with things that are said. That's a pretty rough finish to the Torah, right? To finish it off with the breaking of the luchos. So he says the following. And again, these are things based on sources, the stuff that he learns, right? The osius of the Torah, the letters of the Torah, from the bays in the beginning till that very last lamed of Yisrael, go from neshamas of Am Yisrael correspond to letters of the Torah. So he says that first bays in Bereshis probably corresponds to the neshama of Moshe Rabbeinu, right? That greatest of neshamas which are there. What about the letters that are at the end of the Torah? Which neshamas do they correspond to? Now, those who've been learning Daf Yomi know that the end of the Torah gets a little bit tricky. Because the last 8 psukim, right, there's questions as to whether it really is on the same status as the rest of the Torah. There is even a question as to whether Yoshua wrote those psukim rather than Moshe Rabbeinu. And those are the psukim of Vayomas Shel Moshe, that Moshe died. Right, that's the difficulty of it. Who's writing Vayomas Shel Moshe if Moshe Rabbeinu died? That means that it's talking to neshamas that to them Moshe Rabbeinu's dead. They have no connection to Moshe. They have no connection to Torah's Moshe. Just like at the Chet Egel, Am Yisrael lost the connection when the Satan showed them the image of Moshe Rabbeinu being dead. At the end of days, the Ikvus of the Mashiach, Jewish neshamas feel that it's dead. To them, Moshe is dead. To them, the Torah is dead. But they retain the name Yisrael. Yisrael, afal pi shechota, Yisrael. Those neshamas finish off with the word Yisrael, and that word Yisrael, as we always say, goes straight into the next Bereshis, into the next beginning. Because Am Yisrael will always be able to go and to go on and to be able to continue. Even the lowest of neshamas are connected with a kesher to HaKadosh Baruch Hu that Balak couldn't fathom, Bilam couldn't fathom, and unfortunately we can't fathom. Whether it's about ourselves feeling that we've gone so far that HaKadosh Baruch Hu has lost his love or care or awareness of us, or whether we, Chas v'shalom, think that about other people and think that they have gone too far and that they are cut off and lost. This is what the word Yisrael tells us. The events of Shivasar B'Tamuz, the breaking of the luchos, that huge loss which changed the world that we live in ways that we can't even imagine, that didn't destroy the connection. History took a very different turn. It was a very different world when we didn't get the luchos rishonos, when Moshe Rabbeinu wasn't able to come in with us to Eretz Yisrael. But all the different things happened. And the Chet Egel led into the Chet Meraglim, which led to that Tisha B'Av, which is there. But in its essence, Shivasar B'Tamuz is Chag L'Hashem Mochar. And just as we call Pesach Rosh Kol Mo'adim, Pesach is the first of the Yontiv season. The way Am Yisrael tracks, he says so too in the future. Shivasar B'Tamuz, when it retains its original nature, will be Rosh Kol Mo'adim. It will be a period of holidays which will culminate in Tisha B'Av. Right? If people understand Yiddish, Rabbi Dr. Chorsky wrote a cute song called The Yontiv of Tisha B'Av, all describing what it will be like on that Yontiv. So too, right, that's Rus, her lifetime, and her Megillah is something that seems negative but is really positive. Again, for those who've been learning Bava Basra, there's a question about the chronology of different Sfarim in Tanakh. And according to one opinion, Rus is the beginning of the section of Tanakh that we call Ksuvim, that Kof in Tanakh. And the question was, right, but didn't Eov happen before Rus? So the Gemara says, yeah, but Eov is a book of Puranus. Eov is a book of all sorts of difficult, hard things happening to him. Ask the Gemara, wait, but Rus starts off with Puranus. Vayhi Ra'ov Ba'aretz, a famine in Eretz Yisrael. That's a big Puranus. So the answer, that's Puranus sheyesh la achris. That's a Puranus. It's true, it was a difficult time. But that Ra'ov led Elimelech and his family down to Moab, where Rus was able to come into contact with Naomi and to come and to join Am Yisrael and to lead to that Achris, which is, right, Hengalti Eschem, Achris Kereshis, where we will come back to where we're supposed to be, where Shivasa Tamuz will retain its original place. So all of that is there that's supposed to inspire us to realize that there's something that's here and that we have. It's not something we're hoping to merit to get to. It's just something here, but we have to be able to wake it up. We have to be able to access it. So let's try to finish kind of in a segue to a practical step of something that we can look at a little bit. Obviously, all this time talk about the idea of emphasizing the idea of mitzvahs ben adam lechavero during these times, right? If Bayesheni was destroyed, the Chavetz Chaim makes a simple kal v'chomer. If averos like lashon hara, we're able to, right, in Sinas Chinim, we're able to bring about the destruction of the Beis Hamikdash. So the continued prevalence of those averos certainly should be strong enough to prevent it from being rebuilt. You need a lot more energy to rebuild something than to destroy it. If that was powerful enough to destroy it, it's probably powerful enough to prevent the rebuilding. And there are nice campaigns and different campaigns to learn Sefer Chavetz Chaim, obviously. Right? I'll just tell you, they say Rabbi Zion Abba Shaul, a Talmud, asked him once, he said, is it worth to set time from our Seder to learn Chavetz Chaim? He said, number one, absolutely, right? Certainly it's important to learn those halachas. He says, but I'll give you a shortcut. If you want to be able to stop speaking Lashon Hara, you have to love everybody. You don't say Lashon Hara about people you love. He says, don't just play cat and mouse, so to speak, with the halachas. I want to say this. Can I say it? Can't I say it? I want to say it. First of all, you have to build in the basic that I don't want to hurt people, that I don't want to say bad things about people because I love them. And that's the positive side that has to be invested in so much. The Chavetz Chaim wrote a whole little kuntras on Avos Yisrael. It's very kedai to see. So that's something where we have to emphasize, but both in the positive and the negative. And here's something that I saw recently that I wanted to share because I want to get it on the radar. I don't have much exposure to millions of followers, but Ner Avram is one of the most important kehillas in the world. So if we could say it here, one of the organizations which is very active during this time period is what's called the Chavetz Chaim Heritage Foundation. Right? It was started up in America a while back, especially for inyanim of Lashon Hara, but Bein Adam L'Chaver in general. They always produce a video of drashas, which helps people get through an hour of Tisha B'Av. You know, people show it in their houses or in shuls. Maybe they'll have it here in the shul probably. And they're all wonderful, inspiring things. But I was just looking at their catalog of what they had, and I discovered that they have, it's all in English it seems, entire curriculum, videos, sources, workshops for schools about preventing bullying. Bullying is something that goes on constantly in schools, in camps, out of schools and out of camps, at ages from the littlest ages to older ages, and it truly is a matter of life and death. When it talks about Mavis v'chaim biyad ha-lashon, and Shlomo HaMelech said that death and life are in the hands of the lashon, of the tongue, it's not just about destroying someone's reputation with those harsh words, but it's an idea of causing pain to someone that will last, that makes them less functional, that destroys their connection to Yiddishkeit for those people working with people that have distanced themselves and have a hard time connecting when you trace the thread back. So often it was to bullying. And it's treated nonchalantly by schools, by teachers, by parents, by others. Kids will be kids. But it's an Isra of Anos Devarim. Just like you wouldn't let a little kid bring a ham sandwich into your cheder, right? The idea of tolerating bullying and even the pain which is created by the fact that others are standing on the side and not doing anything when someone is bullied is something that creates tremendous damage and stops Am Yisrael from being able to connect. It takes away people's faith in human beings and others. It creates a world of fear and sadness and anxiety and all sorts of terrible things that can result from those. And Gedolei Yisrael know and understand these things. A beautiful story I saw that Rav Shlomo Zalman Auerbach's father, Chaim Lev Auerbach Zatzal, took him once to the Kosel, and it was Chol HaMoed. This was pre-1948. So Yerushalmi Jew from Shari Chesed took his son for a trip. They went to the Kosel. They met Rabbi Yosef Chaim Sonnenfeld. Shlomo Zalman was very little at the time. I don't know, 5, 6 or something. So Chaim Lev brought him over to Rabbi Yosef Chaim Sonnenfeld, and Rabbi Yosef Chaim, gave him a little pinch on the cheek and asked him some kind of question about the parsha. And Rav Shlomo Zalman, I guess, was overwhelmed, bewildered, or just didn't know how to answer, and he started crying. He said for the rest of his life, Rabbi Yosef Chaim did things to try and help him feel better. He came to his bar mitzvah, even though he was in an advanced age and there was no particular reason for it. He wrote in one of his stories praise of a chiddush that he heard, right, from Rabbi Shlomo Zalman, right, and he made sure to write it in there. He wrote a very lavish haskama for Rabbi Shlomo Zalman's sefer that he wrote when he was 18. He said he knew that all of those were motivated by the fact that he realized that he had caused pain to that little kid and that makes a difference. And he wanted to be sure that what was there to be able to mitigate whatever might have happened. And that creates a person who, from young, learns to develop the idea that I don't want to hurt people. I don't want to be over on another Dvarim. I don't want to say things that will make people uncomfortable in any way. I don't want to say things, when you look at the Rambam on Anos Dvarim, it can be anything which has a negative effect. It makes a person feel worried, afraid, embarrassed, all of these negative emotions if you do that. And then you see how that creates Rav Shlomo Zalman Auerbach. I once saw in a sefer, someone was telling the story in the Cheder Eitz Chaim, right? The classic Yerushalmi Cheder, Rav Shlomo Zalman learned. So there was a boy who got jumped up a grade into his class. People don't tend to like really smart little kids who get jumped up into their class. And the custom there was, despite the huge poverty that was in Yerushalayim at the time, that when a boy in the class would become bar mitzvah, so everyone would chip in and get him a little sefer. Right? Each person put in a few agorot and got some kind of sefer. So it was decided in the class that we're not getting this kid a sefer. Right? He's not one of us. We all had our bar mitzvah last year. He decides he wants to jump up into our class. Fine, let him not get a sefer. Somehow Rav Shlomo Zalman managed to collect money from who knows where, and he bought the sefer himself. And he gave it to the boy in the name of the class. So a big person was telling over this story. He said, do you know the names of the other boys in that class? The person said, no. He said, nobody does. They became nobody. Do you know Rav Shlomo Zalman? Everybody does. He says, that's the difference. So if a person can inculcate that, to learn that from Rabbi Yosef Chaim Sonnenfeld, to bring that into themselves, and then it becomes second nature. One of the beautiful stories, Rabbi Shlomo Zalman was in Shari Tzedek Hospital. His Rebbetzin had just passed away. He was walking out with some other family members to go to prepare the Levaya. One of his Talmidim from Yeshiva, from Kol Torah, comes into the lobby of Shari Tzedek. He sees Rabbi Shlomo Zalman. He's like jumping up and down. He comes running over. He says, Rebbe, I get a mazel tov. My wife just had a baby boy. Shlomo Zalman lit up like a light bulb. He took his hands, he said, Mazel Tov, Tizku L'Gadol, Torah Chuppah Ma'asim Tovim, how's your wife feeling? Just as one would do. When the young man walked away, someone asked him, Rebbe, why didn't you tell him what had happened? He said, he would feel bad. Why should he have to feel bad? Right? There's no reason. That can only come to a person who's absorbed this inside of themselves, who understands this. So this is the way in which we have to fight and to dig and to be rodef the achdus, to be rodef the ava, and to remember that which Bilam and Balak had forgotten. That HaKadosh Baruch Hu's love for Am Yisrael goes beyond, right? Like the Baal Shem Tov said, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu loves the greatest Rasha in Am Yisrael more than I love the greatest tzaddik. And that the future of every single Jewish neshama is always there. It's never stopped. It's never been stopped. That neshama travels through the waves of history as we all have been doing. And there are different lifetimes and different ups and different downs. But just as Shivasa B'Tamuz is going to be, L'Sasan L'Simcha L'Chol Beis Yisrael, so too all those neshamas, like the neshama of Rus that was entrapped within the tomb of Moab, all those neshamas are going to join together, and then we'll be able to hopefully fulfill the yontiv as it's meant to be.